All right, guys, welcome back to JL Scott Fishing and Eats, Potomac River, Tidal Potomac River, and also coming up on the horizon here in about 2 weeks or so, a little bit more than 2 weeks, is the James River. So it'll be nice to get back home on the James River, where I grew up fishing, Worming with Woo Daves, back in the day on the James River. That is where the Bass Pro Tour will be heading. Next stop, I think, stage 6 for the BBT, for Major League Fishing. But let's talk a little bit about Potomac, coming off a couple events. There's another event coming up here quickly, but I wanted to talk some baits and really want to talk about what's happening in the Potomac River on a couple fronts. The first front is the grass development has been crazy sick. And so a lot of people have had to change up their games. That's been, I think, a little bit of the change you're seeing in a lot of the weights. Although the weights have been pretty consistent. If you go back, again, you guys know I'm a dog on the freaking analytics and metrics and stuff. So go back and look at last year, the year before that. Go back and look at weights, okay, and top 10 weights all the way down to 50, and then an average weight for these events. And they're basically all in line. So there's a lot of stuff happening now, especially in what we call the DMV. For you guys who are not familiar with that, that's the District, Maryland, and Virginia. In that area, the Potomac River draws people from everywhere. Okay, like for example, this year already, there have been PA, Pennsylvania Bass Federation events, Maryland Bass Federation events, Virginia Bass Federation events. Okay, in addition to MLF. MLF has had 2 BFL events. They had a Toyota series. They're gonna have another BFL coming up. I think 2 days in September, probably a championship or something like that. 2 days. So it's like, okay, in that regard, people have this misconception that somehow there are a lot of events and a lot of pressure on the Potomac River, and that's just not the case. It's just not the case. And so I got a bunch of messages. I'll get back to you if you had shot me a message, this evening. I got back here. I'm waiting to pick my daughter up. And just want to do this video. And it's just so much misinformation, guys. And all you have to do is look at the permits. The permits are down. Okay, so how this notion, if people aren't catching fish like they used to in the Potomac. So the immediate assumption is, oh, well, it's overfished. No, it's not. No, it's not. Okay? Look at all the permit data right now from Maryland. Do you know that the average event, Maryland has had about 50 events. Okay? Somewhere between 40 and 50 events. All right? On the Potomac. Which means they were permitted in Maryland. Some of those are clubs that have already had 3 or 4 events. Maybe they have them every other weekend. Some of them are big, big clubs, that are affiliated. American Anglers, Chesapeake Angler, Bass. There's a bunch of just clubs that you could come up with from like the West Potomac Tour. Other than just MLF, Fishers of Men. That's another one. You know how many anglers, fishers, and men draws on the Potomac River at an average event? 20. Okay? Like, this is the thing that just drives me nuts, when people go on podcasts and spout things as fact when they're just not fact. You got Chesapeake Bay anglers, okay? You've also got kayak trails. That's another issue that has come up with people, and I've gotten inundated with messages about that. Because there are going to be more kayak trails that are coming. Because kayaking is extremely popular. And for someone to get out in front of it and be like, we have too many trails, why do you want to start a new trail? And why don't you just join one of the existing trails? Well, here's how free markets work, bud. Okay? They work because people don't like what is in the current market. So they want to either create something new for people, or they want to go to a new club that has a different vision, a different leadership team, or that wants something new and fresh and exciting and don't want to be with a been there, done that. Okay, that's how free markets work. So to paint this picture like that there are too many events on the Potomac, when they're actually, if you go back, and listen, you know, some of these kayak trails are part of the problem. They're their own problem. What they're articulating, if they looked in the mirror, they would be the problem. Because they're saying there's too many events bringing too many people to the Potomac River, and yet already this year, you have 2 or 3 kayak trails that have combined, meaning that each of their trail has had an event on the Potomac for their particular series, which could have 20 or 30 or 40 people in it, and they do it on the same day with the other 2 or other 3. We call it double dipping in kayak, and everyone loves that. There's nothing wrong with that. But yet you're drawing 3 times as many people to the river that day that would normally be there. And sometimes this happens twice. So you're in essence part of the problem that you're talking about, right? Like, again, if there are too many people fishing on the Potomac watershed, okay, are you not going to schedule your event on the Potomac? Hell no. It's one of the best fisheries in the region, if not the best fisher in the region. Of course you're going to fish. Of course the clubs are going to schedule events. But this notion that the Potomac is overfished and heavily pressured is just false. Now, there are caveats to that. There are areas of the Potomac that are heavily pressured. Mattawoman, for example, in the spring. The spawning flats, because we know that that's where the bass go to spawn. Certainly. But to say that the whole watershed is, you could go on a Saturday on the Potomac, and I've done it. You can go to Neanjaboy Creek, there's nobody in there. You can go down to Port Tobacco, there's 1 or 2 boats in there. You can go to Chick, and there's 1 or 2 boats in there. Predominantly, when people come to fish the Potomac, they have been sold a narrative of where to fish. And that's where they fish. But that is not where all the fish are. Okay? And all you have to do is look at the Maryland, and Virginia has it as well, I believe, the Maryland permitting. The average event, now let's exclude MLF, okay? Because they permit for 150 boats, okay? Bass isn't here this year. Okay? So there you go. That's a win. That's not 5 days of fishing with 100 anglers and whatever. Okay? The average event on the Potomac River from a club, okay, sanctioned permitted event, is 18 boats. 18. That's your average. In a watershed that goes all the way from roughly DC all the way down to 301 Bridge. And you're going to tell me that there's too many tournaments and there's too much fishing. So where does it all come from? It really comes from this notion that people just aren't catching them as good, maybe as good as they used to catch them. Okay? That's not a product of pressure as much as it's a product of grass. It's a product of the environment. It's a product of the water quality. It's a product of all the other stuff that nobody wants to talk about. Okay? Everybody wants to talk about pressure. It must be the pressure. Oh, it must be because of those guys. It must be because of the pros. It must be because of the kayak anglers. It must be because of... No, it's not. It's not. Okay? It has to do with the environment. It has to do with everything that's happening with the cities and the water and the water quality. And this year we've got a lot more grass now than we've had in the last couple of years, which has changed the bite completely. Okay? And so that's just something that you need to think about and process, okay? And so what I will tell you is I have gone, okay, and talked with a bunch of guys and going back to old school, okay? Old school pitching. Old school getting down in that grass, okay? And I'm going to tell you what. Guys will laugh, okay, until somebody brings it to the scales and drops the hammer down on people. Because sometimes the old way is the best way. Y'all remember the warhead system? Y'all remember this? Guarantee you can't even find these Okeechobee rigs anymore, okay? You could probably make it up yourself. But you want to talk about getting down in that grass as a 3/4 ounce. You can use a 4-aught or 6-aught hook. You want to talk about putting a 5 bass limit in your boat right now on the Potomac River, or right now we're going to find out down on the James River? I can tell you right now, not only did a watermelon pumpkin, which is what this looks like, okay? Look at that jammy. Jammy. 4-pounder. Okay? Watermelon red. Okay? Y'all remember these? Remember these from Uncle Josh? Not my uncle. Uncle Josh. You remember these? Remember these seismic? Everybody just dropped off the face, right? They bought Acme tackle a couple went back in 13 or whatever, and stuff happened with the other side of the Uncle Josh's business, and then Kalen's comes in, but I don't even think these are made anymore, guys. That should tell you everything you need to know that the bass aren't used to seeing these anymore. Okay? In the grass. Alright? And you're punching through that. Alright? The only one of these colors that has not caught a bass in the Potomac in the last week and a half, the only one is this bright red color. That's the only one, guys. All of these have caught. And in fact, I even rigged that warhead up with one of these jambies. Okay? Crushing it. Okay? Crushing it. Alright? I'm saying, sometimes you got to just accept the fact that the fishery changes. And it resets every 5 or 6 or 7 years. And things go back. Right now, there is thick grass. Greenway Flats, thick grass. And you can burn that chatterbait along their lines. You can do whatever you want, okay, to try and catch fish. And you'll probably catch fish. But if you want to get in and under that thick grass, you need something like a warhead system. You need something just like this that you can flip down in there and work in there and work in those holes and work in those pockets. And I'm going to tell you what, if this guy, okay, from the back of the boat can put 5 fish in the freaking boat, okay, quality fish, I know almost all of you guys can, that have far more experience. The other side of it is, sometimes I'm talking today with some guys about the Tidal. Guys, forget this, man. Sometimes you want to look at your resources, and sometimes you just want to think about it. Look, tidal fisheries set people off because a lot of people aren't used to fishing them. If you're used to fishing that tidal fishery, then you know every 14 or so days that tidal cycle resets, right? So today, if high tide is at 7:05 this morning, 14 days from now or so, high tide is going to be at 7:05 in the morning. So if you have an event 2 weeks from now on Saturday, then 2 Saturdays, 2 weeks before that Saturday, you should be pre-fishing. A lot of guys go to a tidal fishery and pre-fish 2 days before an event. Well, everything keeps changing on you. You want to pre-fish that event, in my opinion, like water. Like you would a lake. Like go to a lake, it's pretty much the same. Okay? But if you're pre-fishing, if you come to town and you're pre-fishing and what you have is high tide at 4 a.m. when you went pre-fishing, okay, and you can launch at 6 or 7 in the morning, all right, you're going to be lost when you go and the high tide is at 9 a.m. or 10 a.m. Your areas are not going to be effective at all, guys, and it's just something you want to think about when you think about like the Potomac and the James River.